In this video, we are going to do the final connection between the news article table and the Webflow collection for blog posts. So we've got 5 samples here that Webflow created. At some point, we'll delete those, and through a new function in Xano, we're going to go ahead and automatically take everything that we got from Newscatcher from the table, and we're going to put it into Webflow's collection called blog posts. So in the prior video, we created the webflow.add blog post that just called the API and proved that in a hard-coded way, we could add content to Webflow. So we are going to go ahead and run that again just to make sure everything still works. Okay, so it shows success there. Let me come over to Webflow real quick and just see if we pick up that next item. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, and this is the one that we added. So currently, we still have a functioning API into Webflow. So let's go ahead and start the process of adding in a query and a loop, because we'll go take a look here. For each one of these news articles that is listed here, we want to push those into the Webflow blog post connection. So we're going to double-click on that JSON column. This is one of the articles we got with Newscatcher. We want to take the link and the title, the summary, and probably the publish date. We'll need to add that in, but we want to take those items and use those to fill in the blog posts. So I'm going to show what it looks like to do that piece of the puzzle. Let's get out of the debugger. We're going to go ahead and add in a database request to start with, because we're going to query all records from the news article table. And we are going to call that, let's say, news list. So we're going to get back all the records. They'll be in news list. And from there, I want to do a for loop, which is in data manipulation. Come down to loops for each. And then we want to loop through the list we just created called news list. And each individual item will be put into a variable called item. And so for that item, we want to call an external API. And that external API is going to be what we have defined up above here. I'm going to go ahead while I'm looking at it and change the output to be Webflow response. Go ahead and save that. A quick little description here. The copy and paste capability of a function stack item into, let's say, a for loop, it does not exist yet, but that's being added, or it's at least on their planning list to add. So at that point, we would be able to copy this and paste it into our for loop. For now, what we're going to do is comment out, which is the little eyeball here. I'm going to comment out this initial API request that is hard-coded, and we are going to focus on recreating that in the for loop in the external API request. And to make that a little bit easier, I am going to come back to the same function we're in, but in a different tab, and just start copying and pasting key elements into our new external API call. So on this one, let me pop back here real quick. You'll see that there's a sprintf for the collection ID. So this is adding the collection ID into the URL that I just copied and pasted. So we're going to rebuild that with an add filter, and we will pick the sprintf capability, and then we will add the argument, which is just going to be this text value. So that'll point us to the right collection, and then the rest of the URL is good to go. And so the next thing we want to do is change it to be a post instead of a GET. And then we're going to set up the JSON parameters as you see here with the fields. So there'll be a little bouncing back and forth to get all of those fields set up. So we're going to post. And the first thing I want to do is set a field called fields. And I want that to be of a type, we're going to come down to constants, want it to be an object, because we're going to add on properties into that. And so I'm going to go back into this item and then start adding fields or properties within the fields object. So we're going to set, and I think what I should do is look here instead of guessing. We're going to do name underscore archived underscore draft. See if I can remember each of those. So we've got name underscore archive add another filter. This was underscore draft. And you'll see every time I update it, I do have to come back in and go into the fields property. Just a minor little usability thing. I'm going to, I think authors was next. See how far I can get just remembering. Okay, so we have those. Let's come back over to the other tab and look. Archived, draft, authors. So I now have post body, post description, hero image. So body description, hero image. So we are going to go back in. We're going to set post body. And post description. And then we are going to do, which one was next? Let's see if I can remember. Hero image. I think hero image was next. Hero image. And then the last one I think I remember is slug. I know we need slug, so I'm going to go ahead and just put it in here and hope that I'm right, and then we'll check. So that'll set up the structure. Come back and check, because then we'll move to the headers. Yep. Okay, so that gets us that far. Now what we're going to do is set up the headers for the HTTP request, and we're going to push those into the header array. And so the first one that I'm going to do is the authorization with the sprintf. And so let's go, go to the bottom and go ahead and push onto this into the array that. And then we also want to add the sprintf to add in, here we go, the Webflow API token, the key. Okay. Now let's go back and look at what our next one is. So this is the one we're working from. It's going to be the accept. I'm going to copy and paste that so we have an easier time of just pushing that into the array. And it's just a text value for the header, so that's a pretty quick deal. Close that and go into the content type. So the API is expecting application JSON as that header setup. Go ahead and push. Okay, so we've got our headers set up. And if nothing else, this is a nice little reminder of the wonderful world of import curl. I would have normally just re-imported that, but if you remember from the first or second video, I think it was second video, that import was a little dated from the Webflow documentation, so it had some incorrect properties for the JSON. So as opposed to having to figure that out again, figured it was easier to copy from a working external API call. Okay, so now what we have here, I'm going to save it so I don't lose all that. We are in a for loop of all the articles that are in our database table, and we are going to identify the item and put that information into the API. So let's start with name. So this will be the article name. And so we want to pick item. And it's going to be, I believe it comes back with article.name. And we'll confirm that JSON structure when we run this in debug. But for now, I'm pretty sure I remember it being that structure. So that'll take care of the name. Archived will be a false because we don't want it to be archived. There's false. And draft will also be false because we want this to be published live, not sit there as a draft undisplayed. Come back down and pick false. And if you notice, you could, type in false, but you're going to end up in a different situation because if you were to, let me close this one just as an example. So I didn't save this purposely because when I come into underscore draft, you'll see that the default type is text. And so you don't want to just type in false. With the variables, you want to pick false so that it becomes a type of boolean, and has the value of false. That can be problematic in some areas, like if you're picking item, and I'll show you what that looks like. So in the case of authors, we are going to need to use a hard-coded value on that still. So we're going to flip back over to Webflow and go to our authors table, and we'll pick Matt and scroll to the bottom where they have the unique item ID. Double click on that and copy it. And we're just going to keep that hard-coded for the moment. We'll make changes in a later video to actually determine how we save off authors in Webflow so that we can get that unique ID and associate it with the article. But for now, we'll go this route. And then the post body. Now, technically, we don't have a post body, but what we do have, if I go, I'm going to come back in and rerun a function so we can see the data we're working with. I'm going to get the blog post examples. We're going to run that in debug because what I want to see is the naming standards. So we've got post body and post description, which we have as correct. And if I go back to the database in the news article and double click there, I am looking for summary. So we don't have the full article from Newscatcher because that would be a copyright violation, but they do have summary, and we're going to place, I almost did it there. If I were to do this, this is what I was going to explain. If I were to type in item.article.summary, that would not work. It would treat it as just text. And sometimes I get in a hurry and I do that. What you need to do is make sure you pick the variable so the word text changes to variable any. And then you can add on to that the article summary information. You will cause that problem for yourself probably multiple times, just like I have. And for the description, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pick item, then we're going to add article.summary. So both and this description will be the same. Now, in our Webflow application template that we used, the description is like the excerpt, if you're familiar with WordPress and other tools like that, or almost any blogging tool. And then the hero image, we're going to see if we can get this to work correctly by picking item.article. If you remember in the prior video, if we give it a publicly accessible link URL to the image, Webflow will recognize that in its API, automatically upload this file and associate it with our blog article. So we're going to see if we can get that to work in a more generic looping way, I guess. And then the slug is going to be probably the title. We may have to, I'm going to try something here. I am going to attempt to do it without the slug initially to see if it'll autofill the slug. Don't really know if that's going to work, but at this point, I think I have everything in the loop that I want. So I do my query, I use the news list, and I go through and I call the API call for each item in the database. And I've commented out this first API call because that was just all hard-coded. We'll end up deleting this once we get our current one to work. I'm also going to reduce the number of articles that we have. Let's just do it for 3. It'll go faster. And really, we're just trying to figure out right now. There. So we have 3 articles that should be added. And currently, if we look at what we have here, we have, zoom in on it, 6 items. So we have 6. We should have 9 if all of this works correctly. So let's go ahead and run this and blow up. Let's see, what do we have here? Unable to locate a variable item.article.name. Let's take a look at the debugger. I know I got my 3 items from the query, and then I failed on the first loop because I have a mistake in how I represented, let's see, the item. I have item, I have article. We've got title, we've got summary. Let me go back and look, I've already forgotten. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I need to run and debug again real quick so it can fail. Item, article, oh, name, I get it. I don't want name, I want title. So let's come back into our loop, into our API request, and come down here. That's what happens when I talk and code. Title. So we'll save that, and we will run and see if we succeed. It's taking longer, so that's a good sign. It says everything ran. I didn't have any response, so it doesn't show any response. But if I go look at the debugger, we got our 3 records. We called the API 3 times. Let's take a look before we go over to Webflow and see what our response is for one of these API calls. And obviously what I'm looking for is an HTTP 200. And I did not get that, I got a 400. So we have a validation error. Let's see if it's the slug. Let's come down and see what the problem is. Field post-description. Oh, I think I remember what's wrong here. I think this is where the typo exists. But let's look at the second problem as well while we're here. Okay. So I think it's without the, this is where the typo keeps getting me. If we come back in, I'm going to go to the commented out one that works. Yeah, so this will get me every time because it doesn't make sense, but they forgot the S. So it's decryption instead of description. And so I wasn't thinking about their typo when we did this one and very simply put it in incorrectly. So if I just come into here and get rid of this S, there's a really good chance that we will end up with articles. And I just want to come over to Webflow real quick and confirm that nothing made its way in so that we have an understood test environment. Come back out. Okay. So we still have our original 6. And we are back in Xano, and we are going to run the loop on the 3 again. Come over to the debugger, extend out the first item in the loop. That's not the one I wanted. I want the return, and I want the response, and I want the result, and still a 400. Let's see what's left here. Okay, field hero-image is required. So for some reason, it does not see. Well, that's interesting. I think the problem might be, because here it says problem data is slug. Okay, so let's try adding something into the slug. I'm going to add that back in. We have the name, all the other stuff. I have hero image, and I have the link. Okay, so let's come back into fields, and let's add in a hard-coded slug for the moment to see if we can't get this to go through. New article. And we're going to run again. And it's running, pardon me, running slowly. I'm going to pretend that that's a good sign. We are going to go back and look at the response and the results. And it's not a good sign, still with the 400. It's interesting that it's telling me that the problem data thinking hero image message field is required. What is it that's working in this first one that doesn't work in this one? The field hero image. I come back to the first one and see what we have here. Seems similar, doesn't it? I've got a set of a path slug, and I have a hard-coded value, text value of Mars article. Now let's look at what I did on. The other thing we can do is we can try hard coding again. We'll keep hard coding our way all the way back to where we were before. Hero image item. I wonder if there's something about this value. So I am going to change this back to a text field. And then I'm going to put in what worked before. What I'm thinking is that the value coming out of the JSON might have a carriage return or some other non-visible field that's causing a problem with what we have in the slug listed after. So if I hard code that and do run and debug, that will tell me if I need to do some cleanup on that link field. Come back out to our debugger. So I think, there we go. And we're going to look at our response and see if that gives us a 200. And it did. There we go. So that is the problem. We've got a data issue in what we're getting from Newscatcher. But just to kind of finish this out, if we come back and refresh the screen and then go back to the blog collection, we will see that we have more. So here we have the 3 articles that we got from Newscatcher. So that's good news. But I'm less than enthusiastic because it's not the image as well. And I really want something other than the Mars image. So let's take a minute and figure out what's going on with our data. There's something about this link. Oh, I get it. We need to, in the link, no, I don't get it. I'm wondering if there are some return values or something in here. So I'm going to pause for a second and do a little bit of research and come back with what the solution is. Okay, slightly embarrassing, but here's where I think I went wrong. I kept trying to pass in the link. You were probably yelling at me and I couldn't hear you, which is just the link to this article at its original source, which we will want to use, but what I should be doing is media, which is the image. So it's literally that simple. So let me come back in here and comment that out, and then make those available again. Come back into the loop and the external API call, and come down to the hero image. And as opposed to text, delete that out from my testing. We want item.article.media. And save all of that. And I'm going to take another chance here and slide all the way back down. I'm going to get rid of slug because I really want it to create its own, and I think it might, if I remember correctly, but we'll find out. So let's double check here. We've got 3 items available. We've commented this out, and we're going to go through our loop again. I am going to delete the 3 that I added in with a hard-coded image, because I want the original article image to be saved. And then I'm going to go ahead and publish this just to make sure that we're in a good solid state. See here, there we go. And so once again, we come back and look, and we have one more than I want. So now we should just have the original 5. Being overly cautious, we'll publish. And then we're going to come back over. We're in our webflow.add blog post, and we are going to run and debug. Should go pretty quickly. If I come over to the debugger and come down to the loop like we're getting really good at, and look at the response, I would love to see a 200. And there it is, status of 200, which means when I come back over here and go in, should say refresh. Seems that whenever I add something with an API, if I don't refresh Webflow, I won't pick up those changes. And there they are. And if I look at each one of these, you'll see that it has an image. Almost pointed at the image with my finger like you were going to see that. That is hopefully unique, yep, to each article. So yay. And so I didn't mark any of those as featured, so they'll show up in most recent. But if you see now, I had Elon Musk in my search, and then the topic might have been tech or something, I don't even remember. We'll get into doing all that fun stuff next, but I am now adding new articles, which is pretty cool. New articles with an image. You know, something I want to do here before we leave, even though I think I've been running pretty long, I am going to do a little bit of a Webflow change, because I would like for us, when we click on this, go into preview. When we click on it, I want it to open up a new tab and go out to that article. And there's no reason we shouldn't do that real quickly. So here, click there. And what we want is, in this thumbnail wrapper, I need to be able to add in the link. So we've got a few things we're going to do here real fast to see how successful I can be. We need to go back into the collection, blog posts, into the setup of it, because nowhere in here is there a link. So I'm going to add a field, and it's going to be a link field, and I'm going to call it link. We're going to save that, save the collection, and then in good fashion, I want to publish this so that the API exposes that new link field. And this is just an example of how quickly once you get something running with Xano and Webflow in this case, how quickly we can come back into the loop, into the API request, And we are going to go into the fields. We are going to scroll to the bottom, add a new filter. It's going to be a set, and we're going to call it link, which is the new field we created in Webflow. And I'm going to pick my item variable. And then it will be .article.link. And if I do that, we'll save it. And let's go back over to Webflow, because I also, in Webflow, now that I've created that link, let me refresh here. I'm going to be like over refreshing because I haven't completely figured out when they give me my changes. I want to go to the layout view, and I want the thumbnail wrapper. And I think I can just come over here and I can get the URL. I've got it open in new tab, which is what I want. And I want to be able to pick link, which is there. And then I want to be able to do the same thing. Let's see, featured wrapper. So I'm going to do the same thing on featured wrapper. I want to open in a new tab. I want to get the link. And I don't have anything in featured yet, so that won't work, but I didn't want to forget it. And then we're going to, because we will do the featured piece in a subsequent video where you're allowed to set whichever APIs, sorry, articles you want to have featured, you'll be able to set in Xano and have the API set those. Okay, so I've got it set up so that if I add new articles, I can click on them and they will show up in a new tab. So let's see if that is a true statement. I think I have all the pieces there. This time we're not going to check in the debugger. I am just going to come over and refresh and pretend that everything is perfect and is going to work. We'll go into preview. And it may not work. Yeah, because I should have seen these again. So that's what I get for thinking things are going to work. Back to Xano, look at our debug. Maybe a matter of just, yeah, maybe I've got a duplicate. Click on problems. Not defined in schema, link. But I did define it. You saw me define it. Let's refresh. And then we're going to go back. I'm pretty sure I published and I was able to pick it. I'm going through things too quickly. I'm not thinking. Okay, so here I have link. Zoom in, L-I-N-K. Yay. Okay, so then I come back here. And I want to look a little more carefully and thoughtfully. Link field not described in, and this is just an error from Webflow. Make sure we have all this correct. Set the path of link variable, so it's not text item .article.link. Make sure that's what it's called in here. Link, and that would be this. Oh goodness, okay. I've run you guys on a long time. I'm going to pause you here for a second, come back with what I missed. Okay, I think I figured it out. So let me take you quickly through what that was. In the, we're going to go back to Xano. I have run the Webflow Get blog posts because I wanted to see what it was expecting. And so I added in a value. I hard-coded through Webflow a link value in that field because otherwise it doesn't return the link field. And as you can see here, it created, even though I called it link, it created link-2. And the reason for that is when I was doing testing earlier, I created and deleted a link field. And I don't know that it fully deletes itself because it looks like it created a unique field name on my behalf. So I think if I come back and I call this a link-2 down at the bottom, I think what I thought was going to be easy will be easy. So that's kind of the benefit of being able to get that list of blog post information like we'd done in the prior video, because it lets me do a little bit of testing. And let's go ahead and delete some of these. Delete. Because we want to make sure that as we test this, I don't want to say it's all work just to find out I had something hard-coded and leave you guys with something that's dysfunctional. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh, make sure they're all gone. Back out to our blogs. Okay, there's 5 items there. We're going to come back over to Xano, commented out the first one. We'll be ready to delete that shortly, hopefully. We are going to run this, and I think what I thought was going to be really fast may actually finally come to completion. We're going to make sure we got our articles. Do a little data confirmation here before I get all excited. I'm going to go look at one. We can see we didn't get them, which means I have still broken things, because we just have the 5 articles. So if I go back here into the debugger, I will see that I've broken more things. There's a 400, so that's bad. Let's see here. Unique value was already in. Unique value is already there. Okie dokie. We are going to confirm this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I want to republish. This would be an example of where I'm still trying to discover where Webflow, I guess when I delete stuff, maybe I still need to republish it. And then let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if that eliminates my problem or if that information is cached in Webflow somewhere and still breaks. Okay. So we ran it. And we're looking at our response. And we have a 200. Yay. So that's what I had to do, is publish. And then I refresh. And I look, and I have my new stuff, and I click on one of those, and I have the image, and down at the bottom I have the link. And so this whole runaround was me quickly wanting to make it so that when you clicked on preview and came down to this, there, it'll go out to the article. And Elon Musk finally responds too. So as you can see, we now have each one of these linking out to its original article. So we're getting really close to our news feed at this point. If you recognize all that we have gone through, I now have the ability to come out to the functions. I can run newscatcher get articles, and it will go through and pull in 5 items and put them out in the database as JSON. So anytime I run this, and then I turn around and run the add blog post, I will always get new articles, non-featured new articles put out on Webflow with a link to the original article. and with the image of the original article shown. So at this point, I have a valid news feed. I think what I'm going to do in my subsequent videos is a little bit of cleanup. I want to be able to specify featured. I want to be able to archive older ones so that I never have more than a certain number in the list. And we have the underscore archived. And I also want to add the original published date, which will be the same exact approach we use to add the link information. We'll have to add a field to the blog post collection, republish, and then confirm through our API call by getting blog posts that it really is called published date, which is probably what we'll call it. And then we'll actually have the true published date, not today's date, showing up here. So those are some of the cleanup and I guess enhancement items that will be up and coming. But at this point, I mean, you should feel free to run with it. You've now got the ability to get articles and publish articles. I guess another thing we're missing that I'll mention in case you want to do it ahead of time is in the database of news article, we're going to want to add a new field called published. And so as we go through each of these, we'll go back and update it as published so that the next time we get the query to get everything, we won't get the ones that have already been published. And that way we're only ever publishing new articles. So hopefully that was helpful. I would love to see any comments or questions you might have, and we'll do some enhancements on the next one.